Bismillah ar-Rahman ar-Rahim. This is lecture number 44. The name of the paper is Literary Criticism 1. The name of the book is On the Sublime by Longinus, and the topic is Longinus as a romantic critic. This lecture is specifically for the students of BS English 5th semester GDC PABI, and it is also for the students of those colleges which are affiliated with Abdul Wali Khan University. There is a controversy among the critics whether Longinus was a romantic or a classic. And in support of both, whether he was a romantic critic or a classic critic, we have the arguments of different critics. One of those critics who say that Longinus was a romantic critic was Scott James. Scott James wrote a book. The name of the book is The Making of Great Literature. And there is one chapter in that book which is entitled The First Romantic Critic. And in this chapter, Scott James calls Longinus as the first romantic critic. So, according to Scott James, he was the first person who can be counted as the romantic critic. In support of this statement that he was a romantic critic, he gives us four different arguments, Scott James. In the first argument, which he gives in support of the fact that Longinus was a romantic critic, is the concept of poet, the concept of playwright, the concept of orator as being a sort of mystic, which means that Longinus believed that these three types of people, the poets, the playwrights, and the orators, they are the types of mystics. This weave of considering the poet as mystic was actually the weave of the Romantic age. The Romantic age, which started with Wordsworth, Coleridge, Shelley, Byron, and all these poets were included in this Romantic age. All of them had this view that a poet is a kind of a mystic. Longinus tells us, and this is not something new, we have already discussed this before. Longinus says that the roots and the base of poetry and mysticism is the same. It is the same because in mysticism, we go beyond reason, beyond science, and in poetry too, we go beyond reason and beyond science. So, therefore, mysticism, according to Longinus, has the roots which are the same. The region is to go beyond reason and beyond science. And this region is the region of both mysticism as well as poetry, according to Longinus. In both the cases, whether it's mysticism or poetry, uh, the person leaves behind the clear and certain rule of reason. That is, reason does not rule anymore once you become a mystic or you become a poet, once you write poetry or you are a mystic. This the certain rule of reason and the clear rule of reason is left behind, and rationality is left behind. You enter into another world, you are transported. The poet may not go as far as a mystic can go because mystic is more expert in leaving behind the reason, while the poet follows him But he is a type of mystic, though he may not go so far as the actual mystic can. But both travel in the same region, and that region is away from reason, away from rationality, and the means both of them follow is transport. Both of them use the means of transportation. That is, the mystic transports, he transports himself as well as others, and the poet, he is transported and his poetry transports his readers as well. So, poetry, according to Longinus and also according to the Romantic poets, is a kind of inspiration, it's a kind of revelation, and this inspiration and revelation comes out of spiritual insight. And all these ideas are there in the poetry of the Romantics. So, poetic experience, as we said, is a sort of mystic experience, and this mystic experience takes the poet beyond reason. This idea that poetry is like mysticism is purely a romantic view of poetry, and therefore, this is the first argument in favor of the fact that Longinus was a romantic. इसको उर्दू में सुन लें। लॉन्जाइनस क्या रोमांटिक था? तो ये इसमें तो इख्तिलाफ है कि रोमांटिक था कि क्लासिक था। हम क्लासिक भी डिस्कस करेंगे। स्कॉट जेम्स ने अपनी किताब लिखी है द मेकिंग ऑफ ग्रेट लिटरेचर, और इसमें एक चैप्टर है द फर्स्ट रोमांटिक क्रिटिक, जिसमें लॉन्जाइनस को वो पहला रोमांटिक क्रिटिक करार दे देता है, और इसके सपोर्ट में वो आर्ग्यूमेंट देता है कि लॉन्जाइनस का जो कॉन्सेप्ट है पोएट, प्लेराइट और ऑरेटर का, वो ये है कि ये तीनों एक मिस्टिक की तरह होते हैं। लॉन्जाइनस हमें बताता है कि मिस्टिसिज्म और पोएट्री की रूट्स एक ही हैं, वो एक ही रीजन में है, और उनका रीजन रीजन और साइंस से दूर है, और पोएट्री हो या मिस्टिसिज्म हो, और दोनों जो हैं ये रूल ऑफ रीजन से दूर जाते हैं। पोएट इतना दूर शायद ना जा सके जैसे जितना मिस्टिक जाता है, लेकिन फिर भी इनका रीजन एक ही है और इनका मीन्स ट्रांसपोर्ट है, यानी ये ट्रांसपोर्ट हो जाते हैं और उनके रीडर्स भी ट्रांसपोर्ट हो जाते हैं। तो पोइट्री एक किस्म की इंस्पिरेशन है, एक किस्म की रेवलेशन है, और ये स्पिरिचुअल इंसाइट से आती है। अब ये आइडिया कि पोइट्री जो है मिस्टिक एक्सपीरियंस है और ये हमें रीजन से दूर ले जाती है, ये रोमांटिक व्यू था। तो इसलिए हम कह सकते हैं, और ये क्रिटिक भी हमें कहता है स्कॉट जेम्स कि लॉन्जाइनस एक रोमांटिक था। ये पहला आर्ग्यूमेंट वो देता है। The second argument he gives in favor of the fact that Longinus was a romantic writer, a romantic critic, is this, that poetry, according to him, inspires us, and poetry fills us with frenzy, and it is written in the state of frenzy when the mind is in frenzied state. If it is written in frenzied state and it fills the people with frenzy, what would be the effect on reader? Of course, the effect would not be to instruct only or to please and delight only. That is not the function or the effect of poetry according to Longinus. Longinus would say no to these two, because according to him, poetry does not instruct. Instruction may come, but the intention is not that of instruction. The effect of poetry actually is to create ecstasy, to transport people from this world to the next world. So its function is to take the reader off his feet so that he flies in the air, and to cast a spell on him, just like a magic. Uh, and all these things falls on the reader and as well as on the poet and the mystic like a thunderbolt, and as a result, it sets the reader aflame. Reader catches fire, just like the poet who has caught the fire or the mystic. And this effect of the thunderbolt cannot be resisted. It has to take place, and reason gets no chance to resist. It goes straight to the heart of the reader from the heart of the poet or the mystic. We know that these words, the words like transport, ecstasy, spell, all these are not classic words but romantic words. And therefore, Scott says that Longinus is a romantic. This was the second argument in favor of the fact that he was a romantic. ये दूसरा आर्ग्यूमेंट है कि पोइट्री इंस्पायर करती है, ये एक पागलपन है, पागलपन तो नहीं है, फ्रेंजी का मतलब है कि आप एक किस्म का मिस्टिक बन जाते हैं, और वैसे फ्रेंजी पागल को भी कहते हैं, और रीडर पे जो इफेक्ट होता है वो टू इंस्ट्रक्ट का नहीं है. टू इंस्ट्रक्ट का जो आइडिया है ये न्यू क्लासिसिस्ट्स का आइडिया था. तो जो फंक्शन है इसका अकॉर्डिंग टू लॉन्जाइनस वो टू इंस्ट्रक्ट नहीं है, बल्कि वो है टू ट्रांसपोर्ट और टू क्रिएट एक्सटेसी. ये दोनों जो बातें, एक्सटेसी क्रिएट करना, ट्रांसपोर्ट करना, ये दरअसल रोमांटिक एज की बातें हैं कि वो बताता है हमें कि फंक्शन पोइट्री का ये है कि ये रीडर को हवा में उड़ाता है, ये गोया उस पे एक जादू कर देता है, एक थंडरबोल्ट की तरह, एक गरज चमक की तरह उस पे गिरता है और ये उसको रेजिस्ट नहीं कर सकता, मजबूरन उसको मानना पड़ता है, ट्रांसपोर्ट हो जाता है, एक्सटेसी हो जाती है उस पे, जादू हो जाता है उस पे. ये सारे अल्फाज जो हैं ये रोमांटिक अल्फाज हैं, ना कि क्लासिक. So this was the second argument. The third argument Scott James gives is that imagination is the most important thing and was the most important thing in Romantic age, and it was also very important for Longinus. An important role was played by imagination as well as passions, and these two were considered instrumental and important for the discovery of truth and reality. That the veil of falsehood can be removed with the help of imagination, and under that veil, which is removed by imagination, you will find truth and reality. In fact, the neoclassicists condemned imagination. They thought that imagination takes you away from reality and therefore it is not good. Longinus says that imagination, which is actually the power of forming great conception, along with the passions, they are extremely important for creating that specific effect of transport and frenzy, ecstasy in you or in the reader. The same is the theory of romanticism. Therefore, Longinus, according to the critic Scott James, he was a romantic. So this was the थर्ड आर्गुमेंट. थर्ड आर्गुमेंट ये है कि इमेजिनेशन और पैशन दोनों ये ट्रूथ को जाहिर करने के लिए, सामने लाने के लिए इम्पोर्टेंट है, और ये रोमांटिक एज की बात थी. न्यूक्लासिसिस्ट तो इसको रुकावट समझते थे इमेजिनेशन को ट्रूथ के फाइंड करने में, और लॉन्जाइनस जो है वो भी यही कहता है कि इमेजिनेशन ये दरअसल पावर ऑफ फॉर्मिंग ग्रेट कंसेप्शन है बमाए पैशंस के, ये दोनों जो कि कुदरती तौर पे एक राइटर में हो सकती है या आप हासिल नहीं कर सकते प्रैक्टिस के ज़रिए, ये ज़रूरी है ज़बरदस्त किस्म की पोएट्री के लिए, सब्लिमिटी के लिए। The fourth argument is we know that he compared Demosthenes and Cicero, and while talking about Demosthenes, he said that he stood for the romantic views because Demosthenes was the one who could cast a spell on the audience, magic, just like a magician, just like a wizard. And this idea again is a romantic idea. Therefore, he praises Demosthenes, who stood for romantic views. The conclusion is that Longinus was therefore the first romantic. But though he was a romantic, in another way he was also a classic because he also did not ignore the form and structure. This next topic will be discussed in the next lecture. ये जो हमारा आखिरी पॉइंट था डेमोस्थेनीस का, डेमोस्थेनीस की जो क्वालिटीज़ उसने बताई हैं वो सारी रोमांटिक क्वालिटीज़ ही, मसलन ये पढ़ा लिखा इतना नहीं था लेकिन ये जो बोलता था दिल से निकलता था, रोमांटिक क्वालिटी है। ये एक्सटेसी पैदा करता था अपने लिसनर्स में और रोमांटिक क्वालिटी है। तो ये रोमांटिक व्यूज को रिप्रेजेंट करता है और लॉन्जाइनस ने इसकी तारीफ की है। तो इस वजह से तो ये चार आर्ग्यूमेंट्स, दीज वर 4 आर्ग्यूमेंट्स in favor of the fact that Longinus was a romantic. Thank you and good luck.